They say relationships based solely on money end when the money runs out. That's exactly why we cut ties with my husband's family. It's been a decade since we made that decision. My kids, myself, and even my husband William have kept our distance from them. You see, William used to be all about visiting his family for any little reason, but even he got fed up with their constant antics. His parents, who live with his brother Aiden and his wife, both had long careers as full-time employees and retired with a decent pension and retirement benefits. And Aiden, working at a major company, certainly isn't short on cash. Despite that, whenever they invite us out for a family lunch, they never offer to pay. Worse still, they always find some excuse to make us foot the bill for various things. They'd ask us to order something online because they couldn't figure out how to do it, or to pick up groceries like salt, sugar, and other condiments because they'd run out. For instance, insisted on a specific brand of steak sauce from a particular store, or a certain toilet paper brand. Nothing else would do. There was a time I bought a different brand, and they dramatically sighed, saying it wasn't right, and insisted we take it back home because they apparently still had some. As annoying as that was, what irked me even more was that they never repaid any of the money for these advance purchases. Back then, being newly married, I didn't want to cause a fuss and just went along with their demands. Looking back, I really regret letting them take advantage of us like that. But you know, after over a year of this, anyone's patience would wear thin. I realized something had to change, so I finally brought up the money they owed us. Then, my mother-in-law Madison showed a surprised look and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot about that." I was relieved, thinking we'd finally get paid back, but she never seemed to intend to actually reimburse us. She just said it and left it at that. Despite our persistence, she made a clearly annoyed face and said, "It's just some condiments and household items, no big deal." When I kept insisting, she got frustrated and snapped, "All right, I'll pay you. You're so persistent and annoying." Then, she roughly opened her wallet and said, "Sorry, looks like I don't have enough right now. I'll pay you later," and closed her wallet without waiting for a response. I just felt a strong sense of disgust. I glanced at some bills in her wallet. She must have had plenty of money to pay back. I thought about explaining the situation to my father-in-law Lucas and asking him to repay us. But he always says he knows nothing about the household finances because Madison handles them, and he doesn't want to get involved. Aiden avoids talking to us altogether, and whenever we visit, he just leaves. Fed up, I vented to William and demanded repayment, to which he said, "It's just steak sauce and tissues, right? I'd get it if it was $1,000 or $2,000, but it's just small stuff. Don't get so worked up over little things. You'll get wrinkles." Furious, I threw all the receipts and the total amount at him, asking if he could still say the same. I don't remember the exact amount, but it was probably around $1,000. William couldn't believe it was that much and kept denying it. But you see, ever since I was young, my parents taught me to be very strict about managing money. They always said not to lend or borrow money, even from close friends. And if I must, I was to always note the amount, date, and reason. Besides, preparing a promissory note as well. So, I had kept detailed notes of everything I had fronted for his family. After I showed him the receipts and notes, explaining everything in detail, his initial anger turned to disbelief, then annoyance, asking why steak sauce had to be so expensive. I told him, if it was out of goodwill, I wouldn't be asking for the money back. But this money was for things they specifically asked for and promised to repay. Not paying it back is like defaulting on a cash loan. And why do they always ask us when they live with Aiden? It's just not right. You're not listening to me anymore, so I want you to deal with it. From now on, I don't want anything to do with this. I want to save money for us." He fell silent, then weakly said, "But my parents are relying on us. It'd be rude to turn them down, and we're not that close with Aiden and his family. Besides, we should help each other out in tough times, right?" I snapped, "That's something the person who received help should say. When have they ever helped us? They haven't, because they never have. I get you want to help your parents and feel needed, but I'm the one being sacrificed, not you. If you think using your wife to show filial piety is okay, you're very wrong. Enough is enough. If you insist, consider this repayment as severance money. From now on, if they ask for anything, it's on you. Use your own allowance, not the household budget. End of discussion. And with that, I went straight to the bedroom and slept. I knew he was indecisive, but that was too much. Still, as long as he handles his family himself, I don't mind. Even with his flaws, he works hard and helps around the house, and without his family's interference, he's not a problem, so I haven't considered divorce. But if he ever uses our household funds without permission or makes me out to be the bad guy, I would have gone straight for divorce papers. Despite their continuous requests, I kept directing everything to William, telling his family to ask him instead. The in-laws were surprised by my sudden change in attitude, but as long as their needs were met, they seemed content. They started calling William directly for requests. It's frustrating that I'll never see the money we fronted again. But if just over $1,000 means no more involvement with his family, it's a small price to pay. William kept looking to me for help each time they contacted him, but I ignored it. He deserved it for not taking my concerns seriously. I thought it was just deserts. However, about 6 months after leaving everything to him, he finally admitted defeat. He came to me, nearly in tears, saying he couldn't deal with them anymore. Recently, they had asked him to pay for renovations to their house, and when he refused, they called him an ungrateful son and said they wished they hadn't had him. I was irked that we had always been there to help, and then he opened up about something he'd never told me before. I've never said this before, but in my family, the eldest son is everything. Aiden is always praised, no matter what, while I've always been overlooked. Aiden would get whatever he wanted, but I only got hand-me-downs. He'd get game consoles, and I'd get, like a $10 gift card. So, when my parents started relying on me, I thought I was finally needed. But I guess I was just the spare kid all along. I wish I hadn't been born, he said, apologizing for all the trouble he caused me. I was surprised by his revelation, but I wished he had confided in me sooner. That way, he wouldn't have had to suffer so much. We decided to cut ties with his family and communicated our decision. Despite William's insistence that he couldn't handle it anymore and suggesting they rely on Aiden, the in-laws refused, not wanting to inconvenience him. It was as if they thought it was okay to burden us instead. But even when we said that, they wouldn't listen. If William couldn't help them, they would call me, and if I refused, they'd go back to him. If we turned off our phones, they would come to our house, banging on the door and the doorbell, creating a scene. If we pretended not to be home, they'd even call my workplace for a welfare check. During that time, I got in touch with my high school friend Sophia, and we met up. I shared with her the bizarre actions of William's family, which led to her feeling disgusted and then sympathizing with us. She suggested, people like that don't realize how they're perceived. They probably think it's normal for children to help their parents. Why don't you try doing the same to them? Maybe then they'll back off. I was surprised by her unexpected advice, but after parting with Sophia, I immediately discussed it with William, and we devised a plan to visit his family over the weekend. Thinking we were there to give them money, his parents were in a good mood. However, we said, actually, we've been affected by the economic downturn. Both of our salaries have been cut, and our bonuses are gone. Life is tough right now. We want children, but considering that, we're really short on funds. So, we were hoping for a little help. To start, we need salt, steak sauce, and oh, we're out of bread too. Here's a list of the specific brands we want. And we handed them a list with high-end brands. They got angry, saying it was pathetic that we couldn't afford such basic things and that everything on the list was expensive. So, I said, but, Madison, you guys have asked us for similar things, right? Despite driving a luxury car and going on several trips a year. It's just salt and steak sauce, right? So it shouldn't be a problem, right? Realizing they had done the same thing to us, they started panicking, talking about their savings for retirement and how buying multiple items would be expensive. We responded, "You've always told us we should help each other out in tough times. We've been supporting you for nearly 2 years, so you can do the same, right? That's why we can't afford to pay for your renovations. We came over unexpectedly today, so we'll leave now, but please buy these items by tomorrow." And we left the list with them before leaving their house. When the promised day arrived and we received no contact from William's family, I called to remind them. Madison complained about our seriousness and criticized us for lacking manners, so I retorted, "Are you saying you were aware of your lack of manners while repeatedly urging us?" Then she abruptly hung up. After several unsuccessful attempts to call back, William and I decided to visit his family after work. Madison, who hadn't expected us, let out a small scream upon seeing us. We forced our way in, declaring that we would stay until they prepared everything, which enraged Lucas. He told us not to say such pathetic things because it was shameful. "Man, isn't that something you can't say, Dad? You've been mooching off us, and when we ask for help, you act like you don't know us. That's even more shameful. We're just doing the same thing you've been doing to us. If you call that shameful, then you're the same. And Dad, you can't keep saying you're not involved. You've seen Mom asking us for help. Even if Mom asked, if she hasn't paid, it's normal for you to cover it." William argued. They both fell silent. They finally gave up and promised to have everything ready by the next visit, asking us to leave for the day. I emphasized our request firmly before we left. On the day of collection, all the items they had prepared were the cheapest brands from a supermarket. Even though I was okay with that, I let out an exaggerated sigh and said, "No, they are not what we asked for, is it? It's clearly written here. We don't need these then. We'll leave them here." And I left the items there. That night, they called William to complain, but when he pointed out that they had done the same, they hung up. After repeating it a few times, they seemed to be mentally exhausted. They had changed the locks of their house, so William started ringing the doorbell and shouting outside, pretending to be worried. When neighbors came out asking what was happening and William pretended to be concerned that they might have collapsed inside, the worried neighbors gathered, and the panicked in-laws eventually came out. Seeing them safe, William feigned relief, and that they were awkwardly praised by the neighbors. With the neighbors on our side, they finally gave in after just 3 months. They apologized for their rudeness and agreed to repay us, asking us to stop. I replied, "What are you talking about? It's only been 3 months. You're making it sound like we're crazy, but you were the ones banging on doors and calling my workplace. We'll bill you for the renovation costs in a year." After exchanging glances with William, they turned pale. They finally came to deeply apologize, asking us not to involve ourselves with them anymore, and handed over some money. They added a bit extra to the amount we had fronted. The bundle of bills was quite thick. Seeing the elderly couple trembling and pleading, we felt it was enough. Since they had declared disengagement, we told them we would never involve ourselves with them again and would not take care of them in their old age. And then William and I went home. Just 3 months, but it's still a big deal. It felt incredibly long. We didn't enjoy doing it, but if it was so effective, we should have tried it sooner. The unfamiliar effort took a toll on us, and after realizing we no longer had to deal with his family, all our strength left us, and we both ended up taking time off work due to ill health. I had never taken sick leave before, so my colleagues were surprised. When I returned and explained the battle with the in-laws, I received mixed reactions of disgust and admiration, with some saying my acting was too realistic and creepy. With the in-laws out of our lives, we finally restarted our life as a couple. Thanks to reduced stress, we joyfully discovered I was pregnant just a year after cutting ties. We celebrated, feeling that letting go of bad ties had brought good fortune. We didn't tell the in-laws about the birth, raised our child with help from my family, And despite the challenges of first-time parenting and some marital disputes, we managed to overcome them. Having successfully completed our strategy against them, we gained strange confidence that we would be okay. Later, when our first child was 3 years old, I became pregnant with our second, and eventually, we became parents of 3, leading a fulfilling life. We couldn't afford the luxury like the in-laws, but it was no problem compared to being mooched off by them. We didn't know about their situation for a while after cutting ties, but about 5 years later, we heard details from one of William's relatives. Lucas had been having an affair with a younger woman and squandering money on her. Aiden and his wife both were caught cheating, and the over 40 wife got pregnant with her lover's child. Aiden didn't get fired but was demoted with a significant salary cut, and his wife eventually chose her lover and ran away, leaving only divorce papers behind. It sounded like something out of drama series, but it turned out to be true. Neighbors mentioned hearing them arguing constantly, and Madison, venting to the neighborhood, had told them everything. So, I shared our past experiences with the in-laws with the neighbors, who expressed clear disgust. I accidentally mentioned it to a gossip-loving neighbor, and it seems that the story about why we cut ties with them spread throughout the neighborhood. Now, even years later, they are treated with more caution than necessary, with everyone thinking that family is crazy. Well, I just mentioned it without thinking, but I never promised not to tell others, and I only spoke the truth. Moreover, since they always flaunted their wealth and were disliked by relatives, those relatives now keep their distance, knowing that involvement with them leads to no good. The in-laws, somehow finding out we had a child, contacted us once, asking why we hadn't told them. I responded with maximum enthusiasm. "Oh, are you going to buy us baby goods? Thank you so much. I'll send you a wish list later." But suddenly the call was disconnected. They promised not to contact us, did they? Since then, there has been absolutely no contact from them, and it continues to this day. Our children have grown up. The eldest is now preparing for high school entrance. We've sometimes wondered if it's unfair to the kids not to know their paternal grandparents, but they seem fine, so we reassure ourselves that it's for the best. William ensures he doesn't repeat his family's mistakes and showers equal love on all our children. We've also agreed to be self-reliant in our old age and not to burden our children. While we used to be troubled by the issues with his family, now it seems like it might have been a good experience, in a way. Still, it's definitely not something we'd want to go through again. Oh, what happened? Did you lose the tuition money, Emerson? I'm so sorry, dear. I didn't know. I'll bring you lots of souvenirs from the Mediterranean, okay? What's with that look, Celine? Are you unsatisfied? Don't complain when you're just a housewife. My name is Celine, I'm 48 years old. I'm a housewife. My husband, Mason, 2 years my senior, works as an office employee. We are a family of 4, my daughter Emerson, my mother-in-law Harper, and us. My alarm clock rings at 4:30 in the morning. It's a daily routine, so I often wake up even before it goes off. I get up early to accompany Harper on her walks. It's just a walk around the house, usually done in 30 minutes at most. Despite this, because it's dangerous, Mason insists on having me accompany her. I suggested, "Why can't you go with her?" But he replied, "You just don't get it. I'm working, and I want every extra minute of sleep in the morning I can get. You're a housewife, you have all the time in the world." Thus, the responsibility was pushed onto me. Summer was manageable, but winter was dark and indeed dangerous. Despite my suggestions to take a break, Harper stubbornly continued her routine. As expected, on one cold winter morning, Harper tripped over a small stone and fell. "Are you okay, Harper?" As I reached out to help her up, she snapped back at me angrily. "Hey, Celine. What good are you if you can't even do this simple task? You're so useless." She often finds reasons to hurl insults at me. When we return from the walk, the next activity is Tai Chi. Even here, Harper finds fault with me. Celine, I've told you before, why can't you get these simple movements right? It's like this, do it like this. No, that's not right. Oh, you're so slow to learn. To me, her moves seem more like a comic routine than Tai Chi, but I keep my laughter to myself. After Tai Chi, I prepare breakfast and make sandwiches for Emerson. By this time, Emerson is already up, but Mason is still asleep. When I try to wake him, he responds gruffly, "Keep it down, you idiot woman. Can't you let me sleep in peace?" If I let him sleep until the last minute before work, why didn't you wake me? Now I don't even have time to shave. He gets angry again. Whether I wake you or not, you complain. Maybe you should set your own alarm clock. To which I responds, I work every day for this family, and this is the thanks I get? He takes his frustration out on me. These arguments always seem to happen in front of Harper. Celine, he is right. We rely on him for our livelihood, so you should show more gratitude. She always sides with Mason. I do appreciate him, of course. Otherwise, I wouldn't silently put up with his complaints every day and handle all the household chores. I wait up for him when he comes home late without notice, and I've never let the house go without what it needs. Supporting a husband is part of a wife's role, but Mason, without acknowledging my contributions, keeps demanding gratitude and barking orders from his high horse. And then there's Harper, who complains about everything. Living with these two is a constant struggle. Initially, I didn't choose to be a housewife. Before having children, I worked full-time in an office. I quit when our child was born, planning to return to work once they started elementary school. That plan changed because of Harper. After Mason's father passed away and he decided to have Harper move in with us, she started demanding that I accompany her everywhere, to the hospital, shopping, her social gatherings. Our house is conveniently located. The bus stop is right outside, and Harper is perfectly capable of getting around. She's just being unreasonable. And she doesn't help with household chores. Mason unilaterally decided on this living arrangement without considering my opinion. Initially, I hoped her would help with housework. That hope was dashed on the very first day of living together. Celine, I've been a housewife much longer than you, raising children successfully. Now, I plan to enjoy my free time. She stated that outright and truly did nothing at all. If she had just stayed quiet, it might have been bearable, but no matter how diligently I did the housework, she kept calling me a parasite, useless. At one point, I even considered getting a part-time job. But when I mentioned this to Mason, he became irritable and retorted, "What, my earnings aren't enough for you?" That's rude. Besides, no company would hire someone as dumb as you. Want to work outside like before? Don't be ridiculous. You should just keep quiet and do the housework. His salary isn't great, but he lords it over me because we have no mortgage. I continued being a housewife, believing I was doing my best for the family. Every time he demanded gratitude, I always thought to myself, you should be the one showing gratitude first. I always thought this to myself. Since living together began, Harper's dependency on me grew worse. I was the one who always had to drive her everywhere. Carry heavy things? That was me. Any inconvenient errand? Also me. As Harper's clinginess worsened, Mason's domineering nature escalated. He started to utter hurtful words he would never have said when it was just Emerson and us living together. Whenever I tried to stand up for myself, he would invariably snap, "Shut up, you're just a housewife. Who do you think feeds you, you parasite?" That's what he would say. One day, having reached my limit, I started job hunting without Mason's permission and secured a part-time job for myself. When I told Mason and Harper about getting the job, Mason said, "I'll allow it on the condition that you don't let the quality of your housework drop." Fed up with his arrogant tone, I responded, "That's impossible. If you don't want the quality to drop, then Harper will need to help with the housework." He angrily retorted, "You expect Mom to do housework? How cruel. Mom's nearly 80 years old." Harper, with tears in her eyes, pleaded, That's so cold. Doing housework at my age could hurt my back and legs. I agreed to live with you because you said you'd take care of the housework. Don't make such unreasonable demands. Eventually, my request for shared housework was essentially ignored, and even when I started working and came home late, Harper didn't do any housework at all. I continued to get up earlier and go to bed later than anyone else in the family, accompanying Harper on her early morning walks without a break. I became so busy that I often skipped breakfast and lunch, leading to more days without meals. One day, I fainted from anemia at work. When the company called my family, it wasn't Mason who came to pick me up, but my father, Gavin, from my childhood home. I went back to my parents' house with him. The moment I stepped into the familiar entrance of the home where I grew up, the tears I had been holding back overflowed. I told my father about everything Mason and Harper had done to me, crying all the while. After a while, Mason came to pick me up. Unusually unsettled, he made a brief eye contact to my father and took me back home. At home, an irritated Harper was waiting. "Celine, you are so sarcastic, going back to your parents' house. It's as if you're implying I've been oppressing you. If you had told us, we would have come to pick you up. That's terrible of you." She continued to complain incessantly, not even asking about my fainting or how I was feeling. I was utterly exasperated, but I didn't have the energy to respond. "I'm sorry," I said, and then I took the day off to rest. After that, I started finding ways to reduce the burden of household chores. Like using delivery services instead of going to the grocery store and buying ready-made meals, even if it was a bit more expensive. I also started asking Harper to use taxis when I couldn't provide transportation. I didn't want to faint again and be a burden at work. Meanwhile, the harassment from Mason and Harper only got worse. "You're lowering the quality of housework, such a terrible wife. A useless and foolish wife." Harper continued with her complaints. "I can't eat something this salty. Oh my, it's disgusting. It's like animal feed." Such snide remarks were made persistently, every single day. One day, Harper suddenly suggested going on a trip. She spoke to me in a cajoling tone. "Hey, Celine. You must have saved up some money from your part-time job by now. How about we go relax at a resort this holiday season?" That year, Emerson was preparing for college, so a trip was really not feasible. "Well, Emerson has extracurricular activities and exams, so it's difficult this year. If she gets into college, we can think about a summer vacation." I tried to deflect, but for some reason, Harper suddenly became angry. "Celine, that was such a snide move, going back to your parents' house. It makes it look like I've been oppressing you. We would have come to pick you up if you had told us." That was harsh. Frustrated with her ranting, I retorted. "Listen, I didn't say we wouldn't go on a trip. I'm saying the timing is bad right now. Emerson is considering transferring if she doesn't get into her first-choice college. If she has to transfer, we'll need to buy new textbooks. Can you please stop interfering with her efforts to get accepted? If you insist, I'll make a reservation for you, but please go alone." After I said this, she turned red with anger. "You devil!" She hissed a parting shot and stormed off to her room. I had been saving my hard-earned salary diligently, preparing for Emerson's college entrance fees and tuition. Since Emerson was planning to transfer if necessary, the money would be needed either way. I didn't want to waste it on a frivolous family vacation for Harper's whims. Several months later, Emerson successfully got into her first-choice university. Watching her daily efforts in studies and extracurricular activities, I felt relieved and incredibly happy. The next day was her high school graduation. During breakfast, Harper, with a smug smile, said, "Celine, we're going on an overseas trip tomorrow. Just so you know." "What? You mean Mason is going too?" Harper had a triumphant look on her face. "Yes. You did nothing, so I talked to Mason and he booked it right away. Guess where? The Mediterranean. It's been so long since our last overseas trip. Oh, I can't wait." Harper, are you mistaken about the departure date? Tomorrow is Emerson's graduation ceremony. He is supposed to attend. Right, Mason? I looked at Mason. He was silently sipping his soup, but his face seemed to be holding back a laugh. Emerson, present at the table, looked puzzled. Harper showed me the airline tickets with a mean smile on her face. The departure date was indeed tomorrow. I was so shocked that I froze. Mason, with a nasty grin, said, "I was planning to attend the graduation ceremony, but then I thought it's more important to be filial. Just take some photos of the ceremony for me. That'll be enough for me, thanks." That remark snapped me out of my daze. Filial? Mason, we didn't get any bonuses because of the recession. Where did you find the budget for a Mediterranean trip? When I asked, his response was unbelievable. From your savings, of course. Didn't you say it was for the summer vacation? It's the same thing if we use it now. I was astonished and appalled. That savings was for Emerson's tuition. I told you that. What about her enrollment fees? Can't be helped. We've already bought the tickets. Well, I have to go to work. Mom, please pack the bags. As he left in a hurry, I frantically checked my bank balance on my mobile phone. Almost nothing was left. I turned pale with shock. Emerson looked at me, worried. Harper, still smirking, said, "Oh, what happened? Did the tuition money disappear? My bad. I said anywhere would do, but Mason wanted to be filial, you see. We could have saved more if it was just a holiday trip. Sorry, Emerson, I didn't know that. We'll bring lots of souvenirs from the Mediterranean." Emerson and I were both frozen in shock. The next morning, Mason and Harper left in high spirits. I was so frustrated that I felt like crying, but I desperately held back the tears. Emerson, who should have been celebrating her graduation, looked gloomy. It was natural, considering her father had brushed her off and used up her college enrollment money. While I understood Mason's desire to be filial, it was unforgivable for a father to deplete the entire savings I had meticulously built for Emerson's tuition. That day, as I watched Emerson receive her diploma at the graduation ceremony with tears in my eyes, I made up my mind to execute a certain plan. It was a last resort. Something I had thought of doing if Mason and Harper's harassment became unbearable. I called my father at my childhood home. I had previously told him about the ongoing harassment from Harper and Mason. This plan was originally his idea, born out of concern for me. With his consent, I gripped a hammer and went to Harper's room. I started to break down the walls with the hammer. It was unexpectedly exhilarating, so I handed Emerson a hammer and together, we went around hitting various spots. Once the room was demolished and I felt a sense of relief, I called a demolition company. The next day, the workers arrived and started demolishing the house. We packed our belongings, watching from a distance as the floors were ripped up and doors fell, and in the evening, we left the house and moved to my father's place. The following Sunday, while relaxing at my parents' house, my mobile phone rang. "Hey, Celine! It's me! What's going on? Our house is gone! Where are you now?" It was Mason, back from the Mediterranean. I told the flustered him, "As you can see, I had it demolished. Your and Harper's belongings have been sent to your brother's place." "What? How dare you do this on your own? Give me back my house. The house you were living in is gone. You might as well rely on your brother now." I said this and hung up the phone. A while later, the doorbell at my father's house rang. Mason and Harper barged in, suitcases in hand, shouting. Harper was red-faced with anger. "How could you do this? You destroyed the unique house that Mason built. Do you even realize what you've done?" My father and I exchanged glances and burst into laughter. It seemed that even in this situation, Mason hadn't told his mother the truth. Standing next to Harper, Mason had shrunk and stayed silent. "What's so funny?" As Harper fumed with rage, my father gently explained. "There seems to be a misunderstanding. That house was in Celine's name. What? Harper made a startled sound. It's true. The land originally belonged to me. But even if the land was yours, Mason built the house. He worked hard and paid for it with his salary. It was Mason's house in his name, and Celine demolished it without permission. We'll demand compensation for this. Mason was still silent as ever. Harper seemed genuinely unaware of the truth. I reluctantly began to explain. My father built that house. She turned to me with bloodshot eyes. Her eyes were so wide with surprise, they looked as if they might pop out. What are you saying? Mason was paying a monthly mortgage. He worked hard and earned the money to build that house. Don't destroy his hard work and then tell such an obvious lie. Harper, you really don't know? The land belonged to my father, and he built the house. Moreover, the house was in my name. This is the truth. He built the house on the condition that it would be in my name. Mason was aware of this. You seem to be under a big misunderstanding, but please ask him about it. Mason was trembling slightly, still looking down. Harper shouted at him. You're lying, Mason. Say something in your defense. He, in a weak voice, admitted, Sorry, Mom. What Celine is saying is true. The house was built by her father for us. Then, what about the mortgage? Silence filled the room, speaking volumes. And that silence said it all. Mason had boasted to Harper about a house my father built as if it were his own achievement. My father spoke quietly. Mason, I built that house for you and Celine to live happily. Legally speaking, it may have been different, but in my heart, I had given it to you. However, unfortunately, Celine was unhappy living there. You and your mother treated her like an unpaid housekeeper. I had essentially lent the land and house to you for free on the condition you would make Celine happy. But since she wasn't happy, I'm taking back the land. Harper's face went pale as if she was about to faint, opening and closing her mouth in disbelief. It was understandable that she had believed all this time that her son had built the house. Celine, show them what you've prepared. Prompted by my father, I nodded, stood up, and brought the completed divorce papers to the table. I spoke slowly. I didn't want to destroy the house where I had lived for so long. But you two have treated me like an animal for years. No matter how much you insulted me, I did my duty as a housewife and a wife. But I couldn't bear it any longer. That house no longer exists. Let's end our relationship here today. Mason was slumped over, his head down in defeat. Harper, with a face as white as a famous painter's depiction of a screaming person, was frozen with her mouth agape. This is how Mason and I got divorced. Afterwards, Mason started living in an old house with Harper, reportedly so run down that it was infested with mice. Rumor has it that the house is so old that it's infested with mice. It was a far cry from the spacious, beautiful house my father had built, and surely very inconvenient. But that was no longer my concern. Along with Emerson and my father, I am living happily at my childhood home. My father covered Emerson's university enrollment fee, which I later repaid with my earnings. Despite her busy schedule with studies, Emerson seems to enjoy every day. She happily helps with the household chores. With the help from them, I have more time and financial freedom. Maybe I'll start taking some classes for myself. I'm contemplating that. Right now, I'm extremely happy. How could you do this? Sullivan bought my favorite pizza for tomorrow's discharge celebration. And you threw it in the trash. That's terrible. Rosie, my mother-in-law, said this as she glared at me intensely. I also wanted her to enjoy the delicious pizza to her heart's content. But that was an impossible wish. If you say so, please look inside then, I said with a stern face. Rosie looked at me curiously and then slowly opened the box. Right after, Rosie's body started to tremble. My name is Cindy. I'm a 35-year-old office worker. I met my husband Sullivan through a friend's introduction, and we've been married for 2 years. Both Sullivan and I love our jobs, and after discussing it together, we chose not to have children. Friends with children had sometimes worried about the pressure from the mother-in-law. But to me, that concern seemed unnecessary. Of course, there's a reason for that. The apartment we live in is about a 15-minute drive from my in-laws' house. Rosie lives there alone since her husband passed away 5 years ago due to illness. When I first met Rosie, I told her, I want to continue working even after getting married. Rosie really liked that about me. It's wonderful to be an independent woman. Oh, I'm relieved. I was a bit worried Sullivan might become just an ATM. I'm glad he married someone so capable, she said with a beautiful smile. I quickly grew fond of Rosie, who was talkative and cheerful. My husband and I moved to our current home a year ago. It was a quick decision based on location and rent because we were busy with work. Because of that. Hey, Cindy. This faucet is old, shall we talk to the real estate agent about it? Sullivan suggested to me, pointing at the dripping faucet. Oh, that. I'll contact Mariah about it. Oh. Sorry, I have to go early this morning. I'm leaving now. Mariah is a friend from my university days. I coincidentally met her working at a real estate agency, and she was very helpful in our search for a place. She seemed uninterested in marriage, enjoying her single life. Since reuniting, Mariah and I would have lunch during breaks, and sometimes Sullivan would join us at a pub after work. I loved those times, but Sullivan started coming home late more often as he became responsible for training new employees. Recently, you have been working a lot of overtime, I remarked, to which Sullivan sighed. There's this new employee, Emily. She's slow to catch on, and it's been tough. That sounds hard, I replied while we continued our peaceful married life. Then, we received news that Rosie had been involved in a traffic accident and was hospitalized. Rushing to the hospital, we found her lying in the bed, looking pained. I was walking home from shopping when a car suddenly crashed into me. Can you believe it? And now I have to stay in the hospital for a month. Oh no. Tomorrow was supposed to be my monthly pizza day. Rosie lamented. She had been looking forward to her monthly pizza outing with friends at a local pizzeria. Despite having a broken arm and leg, she seemed in good spirits, which was a relief to us. As Sullivan was busy with work, I made sure to visit Rosie as often as I could. However, she would become gloomy during meals. It's no use. I can't taste anything, she said, apparently having lost her sense of taste and smell due to the accident. But the doctor said it might be temporary. I tried to cheer her up, and she smiled. Right. I hope it gets better before I'm discharged. I want to enjoy pizza again. We laughed together at her playful remark. I kept Sullivan updated on her condition. But my frustration peaked as he continued to use work as an excuse not to visit her. Hey! I get you're busy with work, but this is too much, isn't it? It's not even a busy season at your company, right? I questioned, bewildered. He sighed deeply. Like I've said before, it's tough training the new employee, Emily. Don't make me repeat myself, I countered. It's been half a year since you started training her? If Emily is that incompetent, maybe she's beyond your help. You should talk to your boss. As I pressed on, Sullivan ruffled his hair. Enough. Don't meddle in other people's business. He then retreated to the bathroom. Other people's business? Knowing he couldn't win the argument, Sullivan always escaped to the bathroom whenever things got inconvenient, waiting until my mood improved. This was one aspect of him I disliked even before we got married. Despite the strained days, I always visited Rosie on my days off. Though her taste hadn't returned, and she often looked disheartened, the news from the doctor that she would be discharged the following week brought her great joy. A few days later, I entered her room as usual and noticed Rosie in high spirits. Just now, Sullivan came to visit and look. He brought me pizza from my favorite place. Seeing Rosie so happy, my face turned pale. I quickly snatched the box from her and threw it into the trash can. Rosie was shocked by my sudden action, but she raised her voice. "How could you do that? Sullivan bought my favorite pizza for tomorrow's discharge celebration. And you threw it in the trash. That's terrible." She glared at me fiercely. "But you can't eat this, not this one," I insisted. "Just give it back to me," Rosie demanded. "If you insist, please look inside," I said, and she slowly opened the box. I had a story to tell her. After I finished, her body began to tremble. The next day, I went to a certain place. "What are you doing here?" I saw several men and women standing in front of me. One of them, noticing me, exclaimed, "What?" In a barely audible voice, he started. "But why? I mean, yesterday." I confronted him. "Did you think I knew nothing? What are you planning to do with your family home, Rosie's house?" As I raised my voice, Rosie, standing next to me. "Answer me, Sullivan," she shouted. The truth is, I had lied to Sullivan the day before. Rosie was supposed to be discharged tomorrow, but she got terrible food poisoning. The hospital just called to say her discharge is postponed. Did she eat something strange? I'm worried. Hearing my words, "That's terrible. Well, she gets to rest a bit more in the hospital, huh?" Sullivan replied, seemingly pleased. That's when I became certain. "By the way, did you properly take out that pizza from the fridge for this morning's trash?" Sullivan sometimes brought home gifts like snacks from clients. About a week ago, I found a large box in the fridge. I didn't pay much attention, thinking it was just another snack. But after a few days, I started noticing something odd in the fridge every time I opened it. "What? What's this smell? It stinks." I searched for the source and realized it was coming from that box. It had a fishy and unpleasant smell. Wasn't this a snack? I confronted Sullivan when he got home. "Oh, I forgot. That's a pizza someone gave me. The boss ordered pizza for lunch and treated everyone, but I didn't have time to eat." Thinking back, Sullivan's explanation sounded prepared. "Make sure you take this out tomorrow on trash day," I told him before heading to the bedroom. The next morning, I went to the kitchen, sleepy-eyed, and saw the same pizza on the table. Approaching it, I grimaced at the foul smell. When Sullivan woke up a bit later, "Hey, did you leave this out all night?" I asked him. "I left it out because I thought I might forget to take it out. Eating that would definitely upset someone's stomach." We shared household chores, and taking out the trash was his responsibility. Looking at his laughing, I left for work with a look of disbelief. That day, during my lunch break, I went to visit Rosie. But when I entered her room, I was shocked. The pizza that had been giving off a foul smell just that morning was right there in front of me. Worse, Sullivan had brought it. It was a week-old pizza, left out at room temperature during the heat of summer. Anyone would know eating it would be disastrous. Panicked, I grabbed the box from her and threw it into the trash can. Rosie scolded me, not knowing anything, but after I explained, she slowly opened the box. It looked normal at first glance, probably because it had been in the fridge, but it was slightly discolored. Rosie, unable to smell it, said sadly, "If it had stayed like this, I might have eaten it. I can't taste anything anyway, and above all, it was something Sullivan brought for me. I wouldn't have doubted it." She looked at the pizza with sad eyes. I then said to Rosie, "Rosie, this may not be the right time to say this, but he is having an affair. He's not visiting you because he's caught up with his mistress." At my words, she looked up and exclaimed, "What? An affair? He must be joking. I hate men who cheat." I thought that also Rosie perhaps had some issues in the past. With that in mind, I decided to enlist her help. Sullivan must have been shocked. His mother, supposedly hospitalized, was standing next to his wife, both glaring at him furiously. "This is my house. What do you want in my home? Rosie's voice echoed loudly. Calm down, Mom. Please, lower your voice. Sullivan pleaded. Then, the couple with him, looking confused, turned to the real estate agent accompanying them. What? Isn't this house for sale? We came here to preview it today. Can someone explain what's happening? They glared at the real estate agent. That's because, Then, could you explain to us, Mariah? I asked the agent. Sullivan and his friend Mariah couldn't find an excuse and looked down. This foolish son seems to have concocted some scheme, but this is my house. I'm sorry, but you'll have to leave, Rosie said, and the couple, who had been considering buying the in-laws' house, left angrily, feeling their time had been wasted. Let's go inside and discuss this in detail, Rosie said, still glaring at them. Actually, I had noticed their affair a little while ago. Embarrassingly, I had been making a big mistake all along. Sullivan's company is on my way home from work, and one day, as I was returning, my mobile phone rang. His message saying, "Stuck with overtime again because of the newbie's mistake," made me sigh deeply. By then, I was already suspecting his infidelity and thinking about how to gather evidence. Once, when I was near his company, I saw a group of 3 young women coming out. They looked like fresh recruits. Watching them, I smiled, reminiscing about my own early days. Emily's the star among the newbies, one of them said. It's been years since a newcomers project got approved. I saw McGuire looking pretty jealous, another added. I froze. McGuire was my surname, and Sullivan's too. Was this Emily the one he was having an affair with? As they praised her, and she modestly replied, "Not at all." I was struck by her innocent appearance. Then I did something unexpected. "Excuse me, I overheard you. Are you from the sales department? I'm Mrs. McGuire." Before I was about to say so, they quickly started defending him, thinking I had heard them speaking ill of him. "Ah, are you McGuire's sister? We're always grateful for McGuire's help. You know, McGuire is amazing. I often see his wife picking him up at the entrance. They always leave holding hands." Their words confused me. Eh? Oh, is that so? I heard he was Emily's mentor. He's not causing any trouble, is he? I decided to pretend to be his sister. Emily replied, "Me? My mentor is someone else. McGuire isn't mentoring anyone." She seemed genuinely honest. "He is a bit shy, so please keep our meeting a secret from my brother," I said before parting ways. What was he doing? Who was he cheating with? Unforgivable. Unable to investigate myself due to work, I hired a detective. When shown the photos of the other woman, I felt dizzy. It was Mariah, my friend, not some stranger. There were photos of her and Sullivan arm in arm entering a hotel, and others of them at what looked like Mariah's place. They were meeting almost daily. My love for Sullivan vanished. In Rosie's house, facing the 2 sullen figures, I said, "So, it's troublesome if Rosie gets discharged with the house viewing planned, huh? And to think you tried to feed her old pizza. Are you insane? You could have endangered her life." I ranted, and Mariah, crying, pleaded, "Don't blame him. It's my fault. I fell for him. He's not to blame." Sullivan gently comforted her. What am I even witnessing here? Yeah, Mariah. It's your fault. I heard about your bad reputation. You wouldn't have been interested if he wasn't my husband. Mariah, who had been crying, suddenly froze. What? What rumors? I told the flustered Mariah. About your multiple divorces and how they were all from stealing friends' husbands, and now you're working at that real estate company to pay off the alimony because your last husband found out about your cheating. I said it with disdain. I heard these stories from a college friend when I first suspected Mariah of being Sullivan's affair partner. In college, her nickname was Crusher. known for snatching boyfriends but losing interest once she got them. A type of person I could never understand. Sullivan looked genuinely shocked upon hearing about Mariah's multiple divorces, but he said, "Even so, my feelings haven't changed. We truly love each other. I'm sorry for trying to sell the house secretly. It was her idea, to pay you alimony when we divorce." Was my husband always this foolish? His naivety gave me chills. He turned to Rosie. "Mom, let's sell the house. It's not a bad deal. I was going to convince you once we found a buyer. I thought you'd give it to me as a living inheritance. Please." Rosie, trembling with anger, yelled. "Like father, like son, both no goods. You saw how much I suffered when Dad cheated. How can you do something so terrible?" She hit him with her crutch, furious. I wanted to laugh at the sight but held back. Eventually, Sullivan and I divorced. I slammed him and Mariah with all the evidence and demanded compensation from both. Mariah's request to lower the amount because we were friends was laughable. Friendship discount on alimony? Are you stupid? Should I double it instead? I couldn't understand nor wanted to understand her twisted logic. Furthermore, I heard that Mariah got into legal trouble at her company for trying to sell properties illicitly and was sued. Burdened with debt and facing a difficult time, she was rumored to be in a bad state. Of course, she was fired from her company. Serves her right. And as expected, Sullivan was dumped the moment we divorced. He even came begging for reconciliation, waiting for me at my workplace. Before consulting the police, I went somewhere. "I'm sorry to intrude. I regret to inform you that I've divorced. I felt I owed you the news since you've been so supportive." I visited Sullivan's company to report the divorce to the executive vice president who had spoken at our wedding. Shockingly, Sullivan hadn't reported our divorce and was still wearing our wedding ring. Of course, mine was no longer on my finger. Sullivan stood there, mouth agape, unable to say a word. Emily and her friends realized. "So, she wasn't his sister? Wow. McGuire is so toast." They laughed at the situation. A few months later, he relegated to a depopulated area. I hope he never returns. If he does show up again, I'll go straight to the police. I've been in occasional contact with Rosie since then. Thankfully, her sense of taste and smell fully recovered without any lingering effects. She was too scared to eat pizza for a while, but recently, "I finally had pizza with my friends after a long time," she happily told me. As for me, I'm still dedicated to my work. Frankly, I've had enough of marriage for now, so I'm studying for qualifications to advance my career. My current goal is to eventually move back to my hometown and buy a spacious house to live with my parents. Kayla, you do realize you're a farmer, right? Please don't touch Samuel with those dirty, soil-stained hands. I hate even having to interact like this. No filthy poor people allowed. Please stay away from now on. I've never even had the chance to hold Samuel. Ever since we met, Naomi has treated me like an enemy, saying mean things and showing me a terrible attitude. Because of that, my heart has already reached its limit. Why is being a farmer something to be frowned upon? I'm just doing my job. I've resisted bending to Naomi's unreasonable behavior up until now, but even that has its limits. Yet, God hasn't abandoned me. My name is Kayla, a widow in my 50s. I live with my son Kenneth and his wife Naomi after my husband passed away. Our family has been farming for generations, and I've continued to work on the farm, inherited from my ancestors. Kenneth, already married, stayed to take over the farm. He's a hard worker and proactive in farming. But to be honest, things haven't been going well with Naomi. Naomi, can we talk? I want to check on the farm. Will you come with me? One day, I invited her with those words. There's a reason I spoke up like this. Marrying Kenneth essentially means taking over the farm. Kenneth understands this well and actively studies farming, but Naomi doesn't seem very enthusiastic about the work. I understand that farming might be seen as a tough and dirty job, especially by the younger generation. I thought the same when I was younger. But once you start, it can be unexpectedly rewarding. Naomi hasn't even set foot in the field yet, and at this rate, she might never discover that sense of fulfillment. So, I thought about going to the field with her to help her find that satisfaction. However, Naomi's response to my invitation was far from positive. To the field? Why? I hate the idea of going to such a dirty place. If you must go, please go alone, Kayla. I'll be relaxing in my room. Don't say that. This job isn't as dirty as you make it out to be. You might even find it enjoyable if you actually give it a try. A little visit wouldn't hurt, would it? It's not like that at all. I genuinely hate farming. Bugs come out, the vegetables are dirty. Isn't it awful to force someone to come to the field? Kayla, this is harassment, you know. Harassment, she said, and I couldn't help but let out a surprised huh. That was never my intention. It was meant to be a gesture of concern, hoping to slightly erase her aversion to farming. Yet Naomi continued. If you understand, then please never ask me to farm again. I didn't marry for your sake, you know. If you say something like this again, I might consider divorce. With that, she spat out her words and returned to her room. I thought about discussing this with Kenneth, but he's so positive about farming and works hard every day, I just couldn't bring myself to tell him. So, I decided not to report this incident with Naomi to him, and from then on, I aimed to live a life that didn't upset her, avoiding any confrontation. But even that didn't go well. In front of Kenneth, Naomi was very kind and dependable. However, the moment Kenneth was away, in the field or out shopping, Naomi would transform entirely. I have no intention of doing the housework, just so you know. If you want housework done, Kayla, do it yourself. I'm not a housekeeper. Kayla, wasn't today's dinner a bit too careless? It was so bad, I thought I would vomit. I managed to eat it, but when I think that Kenneth has been eating such food since he was little, I feel so sorry for him. Naomi's heartless words kept coming. Each time I faced them head-on, I felt my heart aching. Why do I have to be subjected to such unreasonable words? What have I done to deserve this? No matter how many times I asked myself, no answer came. And seeing me worn out, Naomi would laugh again. Kayla, you really aren't cut out to be a person. To think such a person is my mother-in-law, I can't help but worry about the future. I'm sure Kenneth doesn't rely on you much either. Elderly people like you should retire from work soon. Stop forcing the farm onto him. We have our own things we want to do. So, Kayla, please just disappear from our world. I'm sorry. The only words I could muster in response to her barrage were I'm sorry. I was so broken that I couldn't think of any words of defiance. Days like this continued, and I eventually developed insomnia. Yet, somehow, I kept pushing myself in my work. Naomi might think farming isn't a big deal, but knowing there are people waiting for the vegetables I grow, I couldn't afford to take a break. Mom, are you okay? You look a bit haggard. Watching me weaken day by day, Kenneth expressed his concern. But Kenneth only sees the good side of Naomi. He's unaware of the cruel words she hurls at me. I wonder what would happen if he found out. If Kenneth and Naomi were to divorce, would that be my fault? Am I stealing his happiness because of me? With those thoughts, I couldn't say anything more. I escaped his worries with some non-committal words like I'm fine, even though I'm really not. I really am a coward. Amidst all this, some good news arrived. Naomi was pregnant. Feeling unwell, Kenneth took her to the hospital, where they received the diagnosis. That day, the house was filled with a celebratory mood. Naomi seemed to be in a good mood too, not hurling her usual cruel words at me. I even thought it might be the first happy day I've had in a long time. I did my best to support her, ensuring she could have a healthy baby. I prepared meals with plenty of nutrients and fresh vegetables, and knowing that wouldn't suffice, I also made sure to serve delicious meat and fish dishes. She seemed to enjoy the meals, and that filled my heart. Maybe my extra kindness was also because I thought it's important not to stress her during her pregnancy. Eventually, she safely gave birth to a healthy baby boy. I was relieved that there were no health issues at birth. I couldn't visit right away because of my farm work. After some time, Naomi and my grandson returned home. The baby was named Samuel. I endeavored even more, keeping in mind that she now needed to raise Samuel healthily, without too much stress, and hopefully relying on me. But it seemed my efforts didn't reach her. One day, she summoned me. "Kayla, a moment." Wondering what it was about, I asked her, only to be met with unbelievable words. "Kayla, do you realize you're a farmer? Please don't touch Samuel with those dirty, soil-stained hands. I hate having to interact like this. No dirty, poor-like people allowed. Please stay away from now on." What? I was dumbfounded by her abrupt words. Seeing my reaction, she laughed even more. "All this time, I've been pretending to be part of the family, but it's all pointless." She mocked me. I wanted to be family. I thought we could support each other as a family. But it seems that was just a nuisance to her. Unforgivable. To dismiss all my feelings like this. What kind of person does that? Anger towards her welled up inside me, but even then, I didn't know how to respond. Understood. And that was all I could respond. I really am a coward. Even in such a situation, I couldn't muster a response to her words. Why am I so incapable? I thought about whether it was my fault, but more than that, I felt a strong sense of injustice towards her. And in those moments, God didn't abandon me. "Kenneth, there's something I need to talk about." At the dinner table that day, Naomi spoke up, sharing everything that had happened. She claimed she had been harassed by me, that she had endured it all this time, but just now I had gone as far as to tell her to leave. She was terrified about what might happen to Samuel if she continued to live with me. She wanted to move out to live just with Kenneth and Samuel, away from me. That was Naomi's claim. Of course, I had no recollection of harassing her. In fact, I felt I was the one being bullied. But my worn-out heart couldn't muster a proper defense. "Well, I can't imagine Mom harassing anyone, but if you feel that way, maybe we should consider moving out." Kenneth's words seemed to please Naomi greatly. After that, they decided to move out. However, they couldn't move too far since the family business needed to be continued, so their new home would still be near mine. Yet, just the thought of not having Naomi in the same house made me feel somewhat relieved. Realizing this made me feel awful again. We're a family, I wanted to live hand in hand. If there were misunderstandings, I wanted to work on understanding each other. But my heart was weaker than I thought. And so, they moved to their new home, and I was left to live alone in this big house. Kenneth continued to visit often, but I started to feel the loneliness. The incident happened the day after they moved out. After finishing the day's work, I came home and, having some free time, checked my mobile phone to find numerous missed calls. All from Naomi. Wondering what it could be, but feeling a surge of aversion towards her, I decided to ignore the calls. There were also several texts seemingly asking me to pick up the phone, but I ignored those too. What could she possibly want now? There's nothing I need to talk to her about anymore. I had a bad feeling, but in the end, I did nothing and left it at that. Then, that evening, the doorbell rang. Thinking it might be her, I checked, and sure enough, it was Naomi. "Naomi, what is it?" "I'm sorry, but could you please leave? I don't want to see your face." At my response, she looked as if she was about to cry. "Why didn't you say anything?" she asked. Say anything? About what? I had no idea, so as I was thinking, "Why didn't you say anything, Kayla? You're not just a farmer, are you? You're also a landowner. I didn't know that. Why did you keep such an important thing a secret?" Her words left me speechless, a stunned "what" escaping my lips. Indeed, as she said, my family has been a line of farmers and, simultaneously, landowners. My family has been managing this area's lands for a very long time. Most homes around here are built on land protected and leased by my ancestors. As a result, the locals and real estate agents managing these properties can't go against me. Many respect me for owning so much land. However, I had deliberately chosen not to mention this to her. She looked down on me just for being a farmer, and I thought she wouldn't be interested in my status anyway. It seems she found out through a certain incident. Kenneth and Naomi had moved to a recently built apartment where she noticed that their rent differed from that of their new friends. Their rent was significantly cheaper. Puzzled, she consulted Kenneth. Then, "Isn't it because the land belongs to Mom?" he suggested. True to Kenneth's words, when they decided to move into this apartment, the real estate agent contacted me, offering to rent it out cheaply. I've been leasing lands to this real estate agency for a long time. Some since my parents' days, establishing an inseparable bond. Faced with this unknown fact, she was taken aback. Though aware I was a farmer, she had no idea about the landowning. This revelation apparently panicked her. "If you had told me, I wouldn't have behaved like that. I wouldn't have suggested moving out either. I would have definitely thought of getting along with Kayla. Why didn't you tell me? If you had, it wouldn't have come to this." "I thought you weren't interested in that kind of thing, Naomi." "Don't decide that for me. If I had known you were a landowner, none of this would have happened." In a panic at the doorstep, she grabbed her head and sat down. The commotion attracted the neighbors, their voices audible, making the situation embarrassingly uncomfortable for me. The moment she learned I was a landowner, she started blaming me like this. After demeaning me all this time, she now tries to take advantage of my position. Her opportunistic behavior was infuriating. And dealing with her in this moment felt like an incredibly troublesome time, prompting me to let out a heavy sigh. Then, she looked up in desperation and started apologizing profusely. "Kayla, I'm sorry for the horrible things I said. It was a shock to me too. The thought that I wasn't relying on you made me feel down. I don't remember when, but you once said families should support each other, right? I think that's a wonderful idea. So why don't we support each other now? I want to make a real effort with you, Kayla." Naomi said that. Her words felt sincere, but it was also clear that it was all for her own benefit. Her frantic attempts to keep me close are solely because of my status as a landowner. She, who showered me with cruel words for being a farmer, changed her tune once she learned I was also from a landowning family. Dissatisfied with her behavior, I coldly dismissed her desperate pleas. "No matter what you say, I no longer intend to join hands with you, Naomi. I remember every harsh word you threw at me. They haunt my dreams, and I still can't sleep well. Life became a bit more peaceful without you, and the thought of returning to that hellish existence disgusts me. Please, don't ever show your face to me again. I don't want to see you ever again." As I spoke, she hung her head, then pleaded even more desperately. "Does this mean you won't even hold Samuel? You might dislike me, but Samuel is your grandson. Won't you look after him? Isn't it heartless to ignore your own flesh and blood?" Unbelievable. I do feel sorry about Samuel. After all, none of this is his fault or Kenneth's, it's all her doing. But that's a separate issue. Once I've decided not to interact with her, it's inevitable that my involvement with Samuel will decrease. She, the very cause of this situation, still acts as if I'm the one at fault, which only adds to my disgust. Yet, she doesn't seem ready to leave. Seeing me fall silent, perhaps she grew desperate and threw more selfish words at me. Her expression was indeed one of utter desperation. "I understand that what I did is unforgivable. I've done things that should anger you, Kayla, and for that, I'm truly sorry. But please, don't abandon me. My heart has changed. I'm filled with a desire to make things right with you. Let's stop this sad separation. We're family, we should support each other, filling in where the other falls short." I'll properly engage in the farm work, I promise. So, please forgive me. Her eyes were bloodshot, clearly desperate to cling to our relationship. The old me might have been swayed by her plea, offering kind words and striving to work together as a family. But now, she is nothing but a destructive force in my life, not a cherished family member. No matter how much she pleads or professes her desire to live together, my mind is made up. I've already given up on her. I'm sorry, but continuing with you is impossible. Your words have hurt me deeply, time and again. I can't endure that life anymore. Being tossed around by you is beyond my limit. Sure, I feel sorry for Samuel and Kenneth, but my heart can't take it anymore. That's... Naomi murmured. Please, don't involve me anymore. And that means forever. I don't consider you part of my family. So, goodbye. The doorbell rang several more times, but after a while, perhaps noticing the neighbor's stares, she finally went home. I never imagined she would come to me like this. All because of my position. But I couldn't call such a person family. The incident spread around the neighborhood and eventually reached Kenneth, leading to a massive argument between him and Naomi. He learned of her behavior towards me, became furious, and even brought up divorce. She desperately tried to avoid it, but once it went to court, the matter was settled. He successfully gained custody of Samuel. It seems she often left the child rearing to him, which might have impacted Samuel's character if it had continued. So, I believe this outcome is for the best. After the verdict, she returned to her parents' home, but it appears Kenneth had informed them of her behavior towards me, and they eventually turned her away. Now, she's working part-time at a small company, barely making ends meet, and living in an old apartment. On the other hand, my life has also changed. Kenneth brought Samuel to my house. Now, Kenneth and I are supporting each other, jointly raising Samuel. After the incident, the neighbors expressed their concern, but I've regained my strength and am back to farming. Kenneth is serious about taking over the family business in the future. The whole ordeal with Naomi was a disaster for both of us, but I hope that one day he finds a partner with whom he can truly collaborate and support. Until then, I intend to protect the happiness of Kenneth and Samuel as a mother.
Hello? I saw you call me multiple times. Is something wrong? Is something wrong? While you've been on a carefree vacation, things have been chaotic here. What? What happened? I can't understand if you just yell at me all of a sudden. You should know, we're in the middle of a funeral. A funeral? Is it your dad? Just come home quickly. Tell Emily who's next to you the same. What? What are you talking about? Just come home and regret it, you awful man. I hung up the phone on my terrible husband, Eric, who was probably enjoying a getaway during my father's funeral. I can't wait to see his face when he comes back. I want to send him straight to hell. I'm a 31-year-old housewife. I've been married for 6 years to Eric. We met when I was working as an office lady, and he was in sales at one of our clients. We started dating after he approached me during several business interactions. I was attracted to his confidence and freedom, and we got married. 2 years ago, we were blessed with our daughter, Lily. At Eric's request, I quit my job and became a housewife. Unfortunately, we lived quite a distance from my parents, so they don't get to see their adorable granddaughter often. Lily, who just turned 2, seems to have entered the toddler tantrums phase. She's the perfect example, refusing to do this and that. I'm getting exhausted dealing with Lily, but Eric has completely thrown childcare responsibilities onto me. I bust my ass working to bring home the bacon, so you handle things at home, he says. It turns out his attitude is influenced by his high-handed father. Of course, I'll handle most of the housework and childcare, but I want you to help a bit. Lily deserves to spend time with her dad, too. Do you want to help me with my job? It's not fair if I have to do both. Why do you think you became a housewife? I couldn't entirely disagree with Eric, so I didn't argue further. Lately, he's been coming home late from work and sometimes doesn't come home on weekends. We've been arguing more, as I'm tired from dealing with Lily's tantrums, and he's exhausted from work. And then there's another source of stress. My sister Emily, who's 2 years older.
Hey, how are you? Sorry, but can you look after the kids this weekend?
Again? You pushed them onto me last time. I'm not your personal babysitter.
Come on, I took care of you a lot when we were younger. Consider it a thank you.
Once in a while is fine, but not multiple times a month. I need a break too.
Well, you're a housewife. You'll be fine. Don't complain too much or Eric will get mad. See you this weekend.
And so she railroaded me again. I always end up taking care of my 3-year-old nephew, Ken, who is innocent in all this. Emily doesn't seem to be getting along with her husband, and since their divorce last year, she's been raising their child alone. Well, more like I've been raising him half the time, because she often leaves him with me over the weekends. And now it's Friday morning, the day before I have to take care of Emily's child. Though I've gotten used to it, Lily and Ken often fight, as they don't get along well. I was eating breakfast, feeling a bit down, when I asked Eric for some advice. Hey, Emily asked me to watch your kids for 2 days starting tomorrow. Mind taking them somewhere fun? I'm worried Lily and Ken might fight if we just stay home. Huh? Didn't I tell you? I'm going on a trip with my colleagues from work tomorrow. You're gonna have to handle it on your own. What? You never mentioned it. You've been all about work, even on your days off. Spend some time with Lily for once. I told you, it's a work thing. Besides, I've said before that I'm leaving home matters to you. Stop making me repeat myself. And with that, Eric left for work, visibly irritated. I felt like I was doing all the parenting by myself, and found myself holding back tears. I thought, it's like I'm a single parent. While I was busy with household chores, the doorbell rang.
Sorry for the last minute request, but could you watch the kids starting today?
Wow, really? We agreed on tomorrow, Emily. You can't just change plans like that.
Plans changed. It's now 3 days instead of 2. You're a stay-at-home mom. You can handle it, right?
Emily, the way you're saying that makes it sound like, Eric won't be around this weekend. How'd you know?
Well, I've just heard from you that he's usually busy and not home on weekends. I just assumed it would be the same this time. Gotta run.
Wait, Emily! Before I could stop her, Emily was gone. Something felt off about what Emily said, but I was too focused on taking care of the kids to think more about it. Luckily, Lily and Ken played nicely without fighting. Just when I thought I could get through these 3 days, I got a call from Mom. It's a call from Mom. I answered the phone, thinking it was unusual. Hello, Mom. What's up? Listen carefully. I just got a call from the police. Dad's been in an accident. I'm heading to the hospital now. You should come too. What? Dad's in an accident? Is he okay? Just come as fast as you can. I'll let Emily know. With a growing sense of dread, I quickly got Lily and Ken into the car and headed to the hospital. Upon arrival, Mom led me to where Dad was, and I was shocked. He was unrecognizable, hooked up to multiple tubes. Dad, why? What happened? I understood when I saw Dad. It was a grim situation. I realized why Mom didn't give me details over the phone. She was afraid I'd get into an accident too. The doctor said tonight is critical, but I have faith in Dad, Mom said. Right, I can't let the kids see me break down now. By the way, I couldn't reach Emily. Did she leave her kids with you again? Yes, she pushed me into taking them for 3 days starting today. I wonder what she's up to at a time like this. That's my reckless daughter. She's taking advantage of being a single mom. Oh, I need to call Eric. I completely forgot. Hold on. I dialed Eric's number. Hey, listen carefully. Dad's had an accident. I'm at the hospital now. Could you come home right away? What? How bad is it? Hey, can you come here? I'm not sure about the details yet. I sensed hesitation and concern in Eric's voice, though I didn't disclose that the situation was critical. I was worried he might panic and get into an accident just like Mom did. Oh man, I'm already on vacation. It was supposed to be tomorrow, but my colleagues got the afternoon off, so we left. I'll buy new clothes here. What? Seriously? You could have told me. Just come back. It's not a big deal, right? I've only met your father a few times. Plus, I'm already at the vacation spot. I'll visit him when I come back the day after tomorrow. I couldn't believe what he was saying. Prioritizing his vacation over a family emergency? I had kept the critical condition a secret, as not to worry Eric, and this was the result. I was just more than disappointed. I felt a murderous rage. Just as I was about to tell him how critical the situation was, I heard a faint female voice on the other end of the line.
Hey, what are you doing? Let's go.
That's when I realized Eric was not on a last-minute trip with a colleague. He was having an affair. I was beyond angry. I was cold. Fine, whatever. I responded and hung up. What was I going to tell Mom? The last thing I wanted to do was bring up Eric's awful behavior at a time like this. I decided to just say that I couldn't reach him. Once I had some peace, I would head to the courthouse to file for divorce. Still no word from Emily either. Where was she? What was she doing? Taking care of the kids, it struck me how Emily and Eric seemed more alike than ever. The next day, Dad passed away peacefully. Mom, who had been holding it together, broke down in tears, and I couldn't help but join her. After hurriedly arranging the funeral, Mom insisted that I take a break. I left the kids at weekend daycare and went to the courthouse to get divorce papers. Still no word from either Eric or Emily. The two of them were eerily similar, but something felt off.
Hey, what are you doing? Let's go.
The female voice on Eric's phone. I had been focusing on Eric's affair, but the voice was eerily familiar. No way. That's it. Just like Emily. I thought it was impossible, but decided to look up Emily's social media. There it was. Pictures of her looking happy on vacation. One of the photos was of an outside scene. I saw a reflection of Eric in the window. Eric and Emily? You've got to be kidding me. Everything clicked. Emily had left Ken with me to go off and have an affair with Eric. It all made sense now. The way Emily talked like she knew I'd been taking care of the kids alone for the past 3 days. After digging through old photos, I found out Eric and Emily's affair had been going on long before her divorce. I thought of something and decided to take immediate action. I kept calling Eric multiple times before the funeral began, but he wouldn't pick up. Well, everything's set on this end, so they can come back whenever. I still haven't told Mom about their affair. This is my revenge. I'll send them both straight to hell. No doubt about it. Finally, after the funeral started, Eric called back. Hello. I saw you called a few times. What's going on? What's going on? While you've been off enjoying your vacation, things here have been a nightmare. Whoa, calm down. How am I supposed to know what you're talking about? You know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm at a funeral. A funeral? Is it father-in-law? Just get back here and tell Emily who's next to you the same. What's this about? Come home and find out. You'll regret it, you awful man. They're probably both panicking right now. I wonder what kind of face they'll make when they get back. Despite being at Dad's funeral, I couldn't concentrate at all. And then, 3 hours later, they came back. both of them together. It's like they're confessing to the affair themselves. Oh, how nice. The two of you came back together. Cheating while Dad was in critical condition? Really? What are you talking about? I just happened to run into Emily. We hurried back, you know.
Right. I just found out too. I'd never have an affair with your husband. I get that you're upset about Dad, but calm down. They seem to have coordinated their lies beforehand, thinking they could fool everyone. They are the ones who make fun of people all the time. If they had just apologized honestly, things might have been different. I showed decisive evidence in front of Mom and them. Photos. So you're still lying, huh? What about this photo from Emily's social media? That's Eric's reflection in the window.
Wait, it is?
Caught red-handed, their faces said it all. And they were speechless. Mom looked visibly strained.
What? Emily? You two had this going on? You can't be serious. While Dad was suffering, you were doing this? Emily, I'm cutting all ties with you as of today. The financial support is also over. Never show your face again.
Mom said, looking at Emily as if she were filth. Perhaps Mom had her suspicions about Emily seeing someone else, but she never would have imagined it would be my husband. That can't be! Stunned and collapsing, Emily finds comfort in Eric's embrace. I'm divorcing you, Eric. No question about it. Expect to hear from my lawyer about alimony and divorce settlements. And Emily, you're not off the hook either. You'll also be hearing from my attorney. Wait, hold on. Divorce settlements? We have young children. This was just a spur-of-the-moment mistake. Can't you forgive us? I promise this was a one-time thing. We won't cheat again or dump the kids on someone else. Please give us another chance. Are you kidding me? I have children too. What I can't forgive is that both of you knew about my father's accident and still prioritized your affair. I can't forgive someone so heartless. And just like that, without paying any attention to my sobbing, I made Eric write up the divorce papers. The divorce was settled. Also, I knew that this wasn't their first offense. They've been having an affair even before Emily's divorce. I chose not to bring it up here. I didn't want to tarnish my dad's funeral any more than it already was. So I'm done here. Now get lost. With those words, the two of them slinked away, attracting icy stares from everyone around. 2 weeks after my dad's funeral, I let Emily's ex-husband know about the affair. Furious, he said he would demand alimony and reconsider custody through his lawyer. As for Ken, who was blameless and had helped out numerous times, I was relieved to know he was innocent. Emily will have a tough time. She's facing alimony demands from both me and her ex, and she can't count on my mom's help anymore. She's been cheating while shoving her childcare responsibilities onto others. She had it coming. As for my ex-husband Eric, I've already informed his workplace about the affair. Now he's doing his job amidst cold stares from colleagues. Eric, whose life revolved only around work and affairs, will probably work even harder now to pay for alimony and child support. As for me, I'm currently living a happy life with Lily and Mom. I don't have plans to remarry yet, but it would be nice to meet someone who truly values me and my family.
Looking back, it's been a life full of ups and downs. After Dad passed away, I decided to drop out of school to work and support my family. Now grown up, my beloved sister Katrina was about to get married. But
a dropout is trash. Dropouts are the dregs of society and won't get anywhere.
shockingly, father-in-law Randall insulted me and our single-parent family in his speech. As I stood in shock at Randall's outrageous words, Katrina rose up in indignation. Bro is a wonderful person who supported our family. Then, as Katrina revealed my background, murmurs started spreading through the crowd. Randall was denounced by everyone present, and his life spiraled down to rock bottom. My name is Tracy, just an ordinary guy working in a factory. No romantic prospects, just immersed in work, day and night. But I've always loved manufacturing, far from being tough. My days are fulfilling. Besides, there's something else that's making me happy now. My sister Katrina is getting married next month. Katrina, congratulations on your wedding. Thank you, both of you, Katrina said with a beaming smile. Her fiancé Timothy is a really dependable and nice guy. Mom and I have met Timothy several times already, and he's definitely a good match. Moreover, Timothy is a doctor, an ENT specialist. Recently, Timothy seems to have taken over the clinic from his father, Randall, who was also a doctor. Because of this, Timothy is very enthusiastic and also quite busy. When I met him a little while ago, he looked tired and troubled. There must be a pressure unimaginable to me. Anyway, I wholeheartedly celebrate their marriage. But Katrina, getting married, huh? Time flies. Bro, how many times are you going to say that? Katrina laughed amusingly. Get it together. I want you to do the representative speech, bro. A speech? But I'm not sure I'm the one for that. I was hesitant about Katrina's request. Honestly, I don't see myself as someone significant. There must be someone more deserving and fitting. However, Katrina playfully patted my back and said, Too bad, it's already decided. That's right, you're the only one. We owe our current lives to you, Tracy, Mom added, smiling. Hearing their words, I found myself reminiscing about our childhood. That was back when we were still a family of 4. Dad, an ordinary office worker, was a kind man adored by many. He would help elderly people carry their bags and search in the mud with children who had lost something. He even once helped a pregnant woman in distress on the street and drove her to the hospital. Thank you so much for your kindness. Uncle, thank you. Thank you very much. I still vividly remember Dad's embarrassed smile as he received these words of gratitude. To me, Dad was like a hero. No, not just to me. Mom and Katrina, too. Our entire family adored him. Though not wealthy, our family life was happy, centered around bright Dad. However, when I was in 4th grade, Dad passed away suddenly. The news was so unexpected I initially thought it must be a mistake. Rushing to the hospital, I found Dad on the bed, barely breathing, his face and body wrapped in bandages. I learned that Dad was passing by an apartment building that caught fire while on a sales call. In front of the blazing apartment among the onlookers, a woman was screaming. Her child, it seemed, was left inside the room. But the fire brigade hadn't arrived yet. Dad held the woman back from entering and rushed into the fire scene himself. The child was saved, but Dad suffered several burns all over his body. According to the doctor, his condition was desperate. You! Mom, clutching Dad's hand, prayed fervently. Sensing the grave atmosphere, Katrina and I clung to Mom. Then, Dad weakly opened his eyes. He looked at each of us slowly, tenderly. Trembling, he stroked my tearful face and muttered something. His throat must have been scorched. He could hardly speak. Then, Dad gazed at Mom, nodded, and closed his eyes. Soon after, his condition drastically worsened. Doctors and nurses frantically tried to save him, but their efforts were in vain. That night, Dad quietly passed away. At the funeral, Dad was mourned by many as he departed on his final journey. Thus began our life as a family of 3. Missing Dad. The days were tough, both emotionally and financially. We lived off of Dad's life insurance, but it wouldn't last for years. Supporting 2 children was incredibly difficult. Naturally, Mom started working part-time out of necessity. However, Mom was frail and couldn't work long hours, resulting in a meager income. The monthly medical expenses for Mom's visit to the doctor were substantial. Our living conditions gradually became more difficult. In the midst of this, I tried to dispel the gloom enveloping our home by acting cheerfully on purpose. I felt I had to be strong. The words Dad left on his deathbed were almost like a groan, but I understood what Dad was saying. Take care of the family. His eyes, indeed, had conveyed that message. With the memory of my late dad in my heart, I was doing my best to support my family. I helped with household chores, checked Katrina's homework, and repaired whatever I could to save money. I remember being praised by Mom and Katrina when I managed to fix the radio by myself. While living this way, I grew up and became a junior in high school. Around this time, the discussion about post-graduation plans became inevitable. With Tracy's grades, you could aim for a top-tier high school. Tracy, why not try for the highest-ranking high school? Mom looked delighted at the teacher's words, but at the same time, I wasn't thinking about further education at all. I plan to work after graduating. When I said this during a parent-teacher conference, both Mom and the teacher were taken aback. After that, my family had numerous discussions about my future. It's such a waste for someone so talented. I'll manage the tuition for further studies. How many times do I have to say it? This is the best choice for our family. Katrina will also need money soon, so I have to earn whatever I can. Bro, you're smarter than me. You should go on to further studies. I can work after finishing middle school. What are you talking about? That's ridiculous. Mom probably hated the idea of limiting her children's future due to our family circumstances. And Katrina, too, must have found it painful to be a burden on me. Their feelings were very dear to me. But being a teenager, I was a bit irritated by their inability to face reality. Amidst this tense atmosphere, the seasons progressed. One winter holiday with the decision on my future looming, I was studying in my room upstairs. Suddenly, I heard a loud noise from downstairs. Curious, I went to check. Shockingly, Mom had collapsed in the kitchen, groaning in pain. Mom! Mom! Katrina was frantically shaking Mom, trying to rouse her. In that moment, the image of Dad helping others came flooding back to me. I calmed Katrina down, called emergency services, and explained the address and situation to the paramedics. Fortunately, the ambulance arrived quickly. Thanks to that, Mom was swiftly taken to the hospital and narrowly escaped danger. Tracy, Katrina, I'm sorry for worrying you. Mom, waking up in the hospital bed, immediately apologized to us, understanding the situation. It turned out Mom had secretly increased her part-time hours to earn money for our education. But, being frail, the strain had triggered an attack of her chronic illness. I'm such a failure as a mother, Mom said, starting to cry out of self-reproach. That's not true! Mom, you've been working hard for us. If only I had helped more with the housework. At that moment, I deeply felt my own inadequacy. In my eagerness to protect my family, I had inadvertently pushed Mom to her limits and failed to notice her growing stress. I'm so sorry, Mom. If I had been more responsible, I said, shedding tears of frustration and guilt. Then, Mom gently stroked my head and said, Lift your head. You did the right thing. I promised Dad I'd protect the family, but that's why. I see Dad in you, Tracy. Mom continued with a smile. Tracy, you've grown into a fine adult. I can't be outdone. Let's all work hard for our family. I will support whatever life you two choose. I've decided to. I'll study hard for both Bro and me, and someday become someone who can help Mom and Bro. Katrina can definitely do it, and I will do my best too. We smiled at each other, tears in our eyes. Thus, our fragmented family was once again united in its bond. Afterward, Mom recovered for about a week before being discharged. After graduating middle school, I got a job at a local factory as recommended by a teacher.
Life as a new worker was tough in many ways, but I kept working diligently and am now a seasoned laborer. Meanwhile, Katrina studied hard through middle and high school and got into a prestigious university's pharmacy program. She's now working hard as a pharmacist in a pharmaceutical company. I used to help with your homework, and now the roles are reversed, I said, laughing, and Katrina also laughed, saying,
It's all thanks to Bro. So you're up for the speech homework, right?
Yeah, I got it. If you're okay with me. And that's how I came to accept the speech for Katrina's big day. Then came the wedding day. Mom and I, dressed formally, entered the venue nervously. Guided by the staff to the waiting room, we were soon greeted by a man with a cheerful smile. It was Randall, the groom's father. Nice to meet you. I'm Tracy, the bride's brother. I couldn't afford to be rude to Katrina's father-in-law. After introducing myself in a hurry, Randall replied with an even brighter smile. I'm Timothy's dad, Randall. Sorry I couldn't make it to the meeting before. Please don't worry about it. We look forward to today. Mom and I exchanged greetings. This was actually the first time we formally met Randall. He had been busy handing over his clinic to his son, the groom, Timothy, and couldn't find the time. My son is lucky to marry a woman with such a respectable background as Katrina. We're just as happy she's marrying a wonderful man like Timothy. So, Tracy, which university did you graduate from? I started working right after finishing middle school. Oh, I see. Randall seemed like a very pleasant person. However, I felt a strange discomfort in our conversation. It was as if he tensed up a bit after learning I was a dropout. But perhaps it was just my imagination. I waited with Mom for the ceremony to begin. Soon the announcement for the start of the ceremony came. Being a doctor's wedding, the venue was crowded with many guests. Amidst them, Mom and I were deeply moved by Katrina's bridal appearance. I felt a warmth in my eyes. The ceremony went smoothly, and then it was time for the reception. While enjoying the lavish food, the time for the family representative speeches arrived. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for gathering here today. Randall spoke confidently and eloquently, without a hint of nervousness. I, admiring his composure, waited anxiously for my turn. But in the next moment, I was shocked by the content of Randall's speech. To be honest, I have a concern regarding this marriage. It's about the bride's brother, Tracy. I heard he's a dropout, a failure. As Mom and I stood dumbfounded, Randall continued harshly. Katrina has built her status through hard work from a poor family environment, without a father. But her brother seems to have failed to rehabilitate himself. The idea of him becoming a part of our family is, frankly, embarrassing and difficult to accept. I was shocked. I could still bear being ridiculed myself. However, he insulted our family, which had lost our father, calling it inferior in front of everyone. I was shaking with a mix of sadness and anger, struggling to contain myself. Meanwhile, Randall's offensive speech grew more intense instead of stopping. Finally reaching my breaking point, I was about to stand up to rebut, when suddenly Katrina stood up with a shout.
Bro is a wonderful person who has supported our family in place of our late dad.
The entire hall fell silent at Katrina's assertiveness, including Randall. After a few seconds, Randall, looking surprised, coughed and tried to regain control. I understand wanting to defend a family member, but the reality is, a dropout like him is the lowest of the low.
What? You don't know, bro. Are you really a doctor?
Randall looked utterly astonished. Katrina then continued as if mocking him.
Bro is a well-known figure involved in the creation of the latest hearing aids.
That's right. After graduating middle school, as mentioned earlier, I started working at a local factory. There I noticed many people with poor hearing due to the constant noises at work. Researching, I found that such environments easily lead to hearing loss, so I made a matchbox-sized hearing aid for a senior colleague with severe hearing loss, using my internet research. I've always been good with machinery, and it was like a thank you for their kindness. Unexpectedly, this homemade hearing aid became a topic at work, and the company president introduced me to a hearing aid manufacturer. After some thought, backed by encouragement, I decided to switch jobs. Since then, I've risen steadily at my new workplace, even leading a new project. Now, I'm developing next-generation AI-equipped hearing aids in a dedicated research lab, not just a factory. Recently, I've been featured in magazines and on TV. And, unbeknownst to me, I've become a well-known figure in the industry. As Katrina introduced my background, the hall began to buzz. People seemed to be searching for me on their mobile phones.
Randall, you're an ENT doctor, right? Shouldn't you be familiar with the hearing aid industry?
That's
Randall was at a loss for words under Katrina's indictment.
Seeing this, the groom, Timothy, also stood up. Tracy and everyone here, I am deeply sorry for Dad's inappropriate remarks. Timothy glanced at Randall with disdain and continued resolutely. Katrina is right. Tracy is indeed a person worthy of respect. In contrast, Dad has long judged people solely by their education. Worse, he's even forged medical documents for his own gain. Why would you say that? Accused by his son, Randall's face turned pale. On that matter, we will sort things out later. For now, Dad, you're not fit to be here. Please leave immediately. Saying this, Timothy signaled the staff with his eyes. Randall, faced with cold stares, was led out of the venue. His head hung low.
Now, with the misunderstanding out of the way, let's move on, shall we?
Tracy, we're counting on you. Even after being prompted by the two, I was still in a daze. Then Mom nudged me gently. Tracy, everyone wants to hear what you have to say. Realizing this, I noticed that everyone in the hall, including Katrina and Timothy, smiling at me. So I went up to the podium amidst warm applause and gave my speech with a tearful voice. It all started when we were still a family of 4. Later, Randall was arrested for creating false medical documents. He had colluded with some healthy acquaintances to fraudulently obtain disability certificates and took a cut from it. The certificates allowed them to receive various financial aids. Timothy had been aware of his father's wrongdoing and had been quietly gathering evidence for some time. Despite their differences, it must have taken a lot of resolve to accuse his own father. Naturally, his clinic lost credibility due to the incident. Now, as a new head, Timothy is working hard and sincerely treating patients to regain that trust. Apparently, his efforts are paying off, as he's gaining more patients who admire him. Katrina had known about Randall's misdeeds from Timothy for some time. She had decided to marry him despite that. My sister, as tough as she is now pregnant with her first child, preparing for the birth with Timothy. Watching the happy couple, I was filled with deep emotions. Is my role coming to an end? I felt both happy and a bit lonely. One day at work, while lost in these thoughts, Katrina suddenly showed up.
Hey bro, there's a woman I want you to meet.
Confused by her intention, I was puzzled, but Katrina determinedly set a meeting place and left quickly. She wanted me to meet her without any preconceptions. So I went to the cafe she had specified. There I saw a woman who seemed to be waiting. Tentatively, I approached her. Are you Mila?
Yes, that's me. You're Tracy, right? Sorry to bother you when you're busy.
She stood up quickly to greet me. Sitting down, I asked her directly, Mila, why did you want to meet me?
Do you remember the apartment fire from years ago?
I gasped in surprise. She was the girl Dad saved from the fire. Mila had become a nurse, inspired by Dad's rescue, and met Katrina at the maternity clinic where she worked. Through conversations with Katrina, she learned about our connection.
I just wanted to apologize. It's my fault, your dad,
she said, tears streaming down her face. I comforted her, smiling and encouraging her. Please don't cry. My dad was cool, wasn't he?
Yes.
We wiped each other's tears while laughing. Gradually, Mila and I grew closer, and after dating for about 6 months, we got married. And to our joy, this spring, Mila became pregnant with our first child. I stroked her slightly swollen belly, savoring our happiness. Dad, thank you. I will cherish this warm family you connected me with. The hero lives on in me.
During the bubble economy era, I saw many people swayed by money. Even now, as a shareholder with an annual dividend of $100,000, I might not fully understand how to use money. My parents-in-law, who looked down on me as a poor pensioner and even talked of cutting ties, was in for a surprise when they learned the truth. My name is Brianna, 68 years old and living on a pension. I lost my husband Anthony in an accident when I was 33 and raised our son Niles alone since then. Now Niles is independent, has a family and 2 kids. I'm a grandmother of 2. To the outside world, I'm just a pensioner, but actually, I'm a shareholder with an annual dividend of $100,000. This is known to hardly anyone. Over 30 years ago, the era was captivated by the bubble economy. Anthony, young Niles, and I lived modestly in a Boston apartment, close to downtown, but with an old town charm, amidst the hustle and bustle, surrounded by old buildings giving away to new ones. Anthony's company was doing well, with good salaries and bonuses. Most people were swept up in the bubble, believing in a bright future. Young women skipping college for jobs, flaunting brand bags, hailing cabs, the slightly wealthier dabbling in stocks, and the richer buying and selling land and buildings. That was the time. Anthony and I were practical, saving for Niles' future, avoiding frivolous spending, though we did indulge in the occasional luxury family trip. The one extravagance was Anthony getting a high-value life insurance policy, something I opposed as unnecessary. Anthony was just 36 and healthy. Why need a $1 million policy? But we were convinced, thinking of the what-ifs, especially with a young child. Life continued normally after the insurance, filled with simple, happy family moments. But then, the unexpected happened. Anthony died in a car accident. The wealthy driver at fault offered a substantial settlement. Combined with the insurance, I suddenly became a wealthy widow. The money brought no joy, only the pain of losing Anthony. If all my wealth could bring him back, I would have given it away without a second thought. I adored Anthony, bright and kind-hearted. At the funeral, the words of the gathered relatives shocked me. "So sad, but you must have received a good sum, right?" "Lucky to have had that insurance." "I know of a great property. Maybe you can invest a bit." There were even those who tried to sell me things. Everyone seemed a bit mad with the bubble economy. From then on, I kept my distance from these relatives. But as time eased the grief, I was grateful for the financial security for Niles and me. Banked money meant we had enough interest for a comfortable life. With no interest in luxury or gourmet life, and not wanting to waste the money exchanged for Anthony's life, I worked part-time at a local sandwich shop. Even working just a few hours while Niles was at school, we lived comfortably, enviable to some. In those days, the euphoria of the economic bubble was fading away. I was 36, and Niles had just started middle school. Suddenly, the economy cooled, and companies began to fail one after another. I remember thinking, what was the point of all that partying? Money, I realized, has the power to drive people mad. Those relatives of mine, they wouldn't have been the same without the bubble economy. Back then, the interest rates at banks were so high during the bubble era, it was enough to cover living expenses with just the interest. But I knew interest rates would keep falling in the future. That's when I met Gail, a 34-year-old who worked at a securities firm, 2 years younger than me. He too had been swept up in the bubble economy.
He deeply regretted having clients who went bankrupt because of his advice. Some even had their families fall apart.
The only saving grace is that no one took their own life,
he'd say. Many of his colleagues had similar experiences. I asked him, I want to invest in companies that were solid even during the bubble era, and those that have been consistently hardworking. Maybe out of a sense of atonement, Gail readily accepted my request. I became a shareholder in several companies. This turned out to be a successful move. Though there was no rapid increase in value, the companies steadily grew, providing me with an annual dividend of $100,000. I kept this and the fact that our home had money from Niles, fearing that money could corrupt and thinking it wouldn't be good for his future to know about it. I told Niles we only had a little money left from his father. When Niles turned 30 and wanted to get married, he brought home his partner, Hannah, a beautiful woman 3 years his junior, and a colleague at his company. At that time, Niles and I were living in an old Boston apartment with Anthony. The apartment was supposed to be demolished during the bubble era, but survived because the bubble burst just in time. I thought we'd get a new place when Niles got married, whether we lived together or not. More than anything, I had an attachment to this apartment where I lived with the late Anthony. To Hannah, we must have looked like a poor single-parent family. She looked around at our place unabashedly and said, "It's impossible for the three of us to live here, isn't it?" I thought the same, so I just nodded in silence.
Mom, we were thinking, until we have kids, we want to live by ourselves. Maybe get an apartment nearby,"
said Niles. It seemed like Niles was already under Hannah's thumb. Essentially, Hannah didn't want to live with me. I accepted that.
About the living expenses.
Until then, I had been receiving $1.5K out of Niles' $2.5K salary. In reality, I was depositing it all back into his bank account. "Don't worry, there's still a little money left from Dad, and I'll start working part-time," I reassured him. At that moment, I didn't have a bad impression of Hannah, but when Niles was in the bathroom, she said disdainfully, "You're from the bubble era, right? Born in an era of making money, yet living like this? If it were me, I would have definitely become rich." That's when my impression of her plummeted. Anyone can say anything in hindsight. Looking back, it might seem silly to everyone, but when you're in the middle of it, sometimes there's nothing you can do. In about 5 years, you'll start getting your pension, right? Please don't rely on us, and do your best. Being spoken to in such a patronizing way, I was tempted to retort, "Actually, I get $100,000 annually from stock dividends, and my savings exceeds $3 million. But I held back and instead asked, "Please take good care of Niles. Niles has his own life to lead. I'm here if he's really in trouble." With that mindset, I never revealed my financial secret to Niles and his wife. Still, I discreetly handed Niles a banking card loaded with money. "Don't let Hannah find out. Use it if you're ever in a bind." The account had over $100,000 in it. Niles was quite surprised. "That's money you contributed to the household for the 8 years since you started working. Remember, I said your dad left us a bit of money. That's why I'm fine financially, but I thought it wouldn't benefit you if I said that. Money is important, but it can also drive people crazy. Use it wisely." Niles nodded vigorously to my words. 8 years had passed since Niles got married. I still worked part-time a few hours a day. It's my valuable connection to society. When I wasn't working, I enjoyed my days watching movies on a big monitor at home, or visiting art galleries and museums. I now had 2 grandchildren, a 6-year-old boy and a 4-year-old girl. Grandchildren are indeed adorable. Niles sometimes brought them to my apartment, but Hannah, my daughter-in-law, never accompanied them. Then one day, Hannah came along unexpectedly. Seeing how close the grandchildren were to me, she angrily exclaimed, "I knew it! You're always bringing the kids here."
"It's not that often. You always say you don't want Mom to come to our house. Mom wants to see her grandkids, right?"
It seems Niles had been bringing the kids over without telling Hannah. I'm sorry. It's my fault for wanting to see the grandkids. As I tried to defend Niles, Hannah snapped. I don't want to hear it from a pensioner with no money. Stay out of it. I absolutely don't want to do any caregiving. I'd be fine with cutting ties. She yelled hysterically. At this point, I couldn't stay quiet. Hannah, be careful not to regret saying that. Regret? As if. That settles it. The kids won't see you anymore, she said, grabbing the children's hands to leave. Niles seemed shocked too. Hey, what are you saying? Wait a minute, Mom. I'm sorry. Just for today. He followed after Hannah and the kids. I sighed deeply. 8 years into their marriage, Hannah, whom I've barely seen. Hannah, who always treated me like a nuisance. It's normal for daughters-in-law and mothers-in-law to clash. There was a time when I said that. But if you never intended to make it work from the beginning, there's nothing you can do. About 2 months later, Niles came to my apartment on his way home from work. He looked pale and clearly something was wrong. Sorry, Mom. Hannah found the banking card you gave me. Frankly, I'm more surprised it was kept a secret for so long. After 8 years of marriage? To think he managed to hide it from Hannah all this time. From what I hear, Niles' life has been pretty miserable. At first, his monthly allowance was $300, but after the first child, it dropped to $200, and then to $150 after the second. That's tough, including lunch money. And while imposing frugality on Anthony, Hannah herself seems to freely spend on cosmetics, clothes, and the occasional fancy lunch. So I started taking out a little from that savings every month to go drinking with colleagues or to buy new socks when mine got holes, since I couldn't get them otherwise. Hearing this, I almost cried for Niles. Apparently, he kept the withdrawal slips in his wallet, and Hannah found them. Hey, what's this statement about? The balance is nearly $100K. Confronted like this, he confessed it was money left by Dad and handed over to me. It's a bit different, but that's okay. I lost it all. Already about $20K withdrawn. I'm just so tired. According to Niles, Dad's savings was what made enduring everything bearable. The daily complaints and gossip from Hannah, even calming her down during her hysterical outburst. I advised Niles to pretend he lost his banking card to prevent any more withdrawals. Just report it lost and get it reissued. Then you don't have to worry about Hannah withdrawing money. Contact the bank as soon as possible. Right. I was so shocked I couldn't think straight. Niles is, to put it nicely, calm and kind, but to put it bluntly, a bit too laid back. Remember how she said something awful to you the other day? If I try to defend you, she immediately starts with calling me a mama's boy and gets hysterical. The situation seemed even more serious. Lately, she's been saying awful things to the kids when I'm not around. I thought this couldn't be ignored. Think carefully about what's best for you and the kids. I can take care of you and the grandkids. That was all I could say. I didn't think I could force a divorce, and marital issues should be resolved by the couple, I believed. If you ever find yourself without a place to go, you're always welcome here. Niles nodded repeatedly as I said this. A month later, I was out at sea, a luxurious cruise around Hawaii lasting 10 days. Niles and the 2 grandkids were with me. 10 days of relaxation, away from worldly worries. The cruise ship was so luxurious, we never had a dull moment. Then I got a call from Hannah, my daughter-in-law. I could have ignored it, but I answered. Brianna, where are you? I went to the salon, and when I came back, Niles, your son, left divorce papers and took the kids somewhere. They haven't been back since yesterday. I went to your apartment, and it's all cleared out. Niles is here with me. I switched to a video call, showing the blue sea below and the luxurious interior of the ship. What? He's with me and the grandkids on this luxury cruise. We're off to a welcome French dinner, so I have to go. Wait, what are you saying? Explain this properly to me. Hannah was shouting something, but I ignored her and hung up the phone. Throughout dinner, Hannah kept calling multiple times. After enjoying a leisurely and luxurious French meal, I finally answered the phone. You finally answered. What's going on? Well, I decided to rebuild that apartment into a condominium. We're starting construction soon, so I thought it'd be nice to go on a relaxing trip in the meantime. Niles had some paid leave accumulated, so he's coming along. What? I don't understand what you're saying. You don't need to worry about it since you disowned us. But just so you know, I'm a shareholder with an annual dividend of $100,000. Sorry, I'm not some poor pension-living old lady. Wait, what? Hold on a second, Brianna. You disowned us, and Niles is talking about getting a divorce, so let's talk when we get back from the trip. We'll be staying in a hotel until the condominium is built, so I'll contact you then. Hannah was still yelling on the other end, but I hung up the phone without paying attention. A lot has happened this past month. First, Hannah went berserk when she realized she couldn't withdraw money, claiming shared property rights. Shared marital property refers to what's built during the marriage. Niles explained that this doesn't apply here, but she was not convinced. When he pointed out how she's been spending $500 a month on clothes and cosmetics since the marriage, she snapped back. What's wrong with a wife wanting to look beautiful? Niles came to me with a completely exhausted face. I think I'm getting a divorce, he said quietly. That sounds good. As for where you'll live, I was thinking of rebuilding this apartment into a condominium, or maybe we should buy a high-rise apartment. Niles initially thought I was joking. What are you saying, Mom? The truth is, I bought this land and building at a significantly reduced price after the economic bubble burst. It was already old at the time, but I continued living here. It was the apartment filled with memories of my late husband, Anthony. This is how I finally revealed my secret to Niles. I still don't know if it was the right thing to do. Back then, I didn't know what to do and couldn't waste the money I got in exchange for Dad's life. If I had told Hannah from the start that we had money, maybe things would have been different. I think it was for the best. We couldn't live in luxury, but we never felt miserable. I had a normal student life. If I knew we had money, I might have messed up my life. I'm not smart. I thought differently, but it might have just been a misunderstanding. As for Hannah, maybe it was good to keep it hidden. A wife who's kind only when there's money and disowns when there's none? Isn't that just awful? Niles said this, looking a bit sad. After confiding in Niles, I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. Niles preferred to live here if we were rebuilding, not in a high-rise. He's afraid of heights. I felt the same, so I immediately contacted the construction company. It wasn't a large plot of land, but I was happy we could live on this familiar land in the small condominium we could build. On the appointed day, with a contrite face, Hannah visited us in a luxurious hotel room. Niles, the grandchildren, and I had just returned from a luxury cruise and were ready to move into the condominium. I've always lived modestly, never relying on having money. Luxury cruises and upscale hotels are a new kind of splurge for me. I guess I've earned a bit of indulgence. I'm spending my days going to zoos and aquariums with my grandkids, sometimes just relaxing with a sitter for them. Niles, commuting from the hotel to work, says it feels strange. Brianna, you were really wealthy all along, huh? Hannah, who's become uncharacteristically quiet and watchful, says that. You don't need to be so familiar with me anymore, Hannah. We're estranged, remember? When I said that, she responds in an eerily sweet tone. Oh, don't say that. I know I haven't been the best daughter-in-law, but I'll change my ways, I promise. Her eyes looked almost pleading. I don't believe you have it in you to change. I have no intention of staying married to you, Niles says firmly. What do you mean? The kids need their mom. Trying to call the kids over to her side, they respond. Mom's scary. We don't like her. We prefer Grandma. Hannah freezes as our 6-year-old grandson says that. What? All of you are against me? I won't let you divorce me. I had expected her to say something like that. If that's your decision, we'll get a lawyer and fight this. We'll demand you repay all of Niall's savings you took, I tell her. Stumped for words, Hannah finally sighs and says, No matter how much money it costs, I will win the divorce and custody. But if you sign the divorce application now, I will not claim the money you spent. I thought she sounded like a really bad guy, but seeing that there was no chance of winning, Hannah shrugged and said, I understand. Our small 3-story condominium. On the first floor, there's my place, and the home for Niles and the kids. Even after learning about the family wealth, Niles' lifestyle hasn't changed much. He's most content buying plastic models he loved since childhood. He even smiles looking at the old plastic models he couldn't take with him when he got married, now displayed in his room. Is there nothing else you want to do? I asked him once. If anyone should do something else, it's you, Mom. Instead of just donating, you should indulge yourself more, he said with a laugh. Money is important, sure. Better to have it than not, but not everything enjoyable or fulfilling can be solved with money. I reflected. That's probably true. Now I know that whatever my grandkids want to pursue or whatever paths they choose, they won't have to give up because of money. When my brother and his wife, who had been caring for our parents, needed help with caregiving, I was able to provide enough financial support. That might have been sufficient. Hannah, who had divorced, initially met her children on visitation days, but gradually these meetings became less frequent and more often canceled. It appears she's focused on her dating life. In the end, she is just self-centered and cold. Surely Niles must think that the one that got away is always the biggest. She's probably hunting for a wealthier man, wondering if there's someone richer out there. Each time she meets a man, she must think, maybe he's wealthy, and then play the demure woman. It's kind of funny to imagine, but I've never heard about her getting remarried. Brianna's had her fair share of struggles, hasn't she? The one who said this over lunch is Gail, from the brokerage firm I've been dealing with. He seems to have risen quite high, but he stayed single all this time. The cruise was wonderful. I'm thinking of going on a world tour next. How about joining me, Gail? When I suggested this, Gail looked surprised. Wow, that does sound fun. Is it okay for someone like me to join you? Of course, it's lonely traveling alone. What? Not with your family, but just the two of us? Niles can't take a long vacation, and the kids have school. I've known Gail for over 30 years. I knew he had a soft spot for me, but I loved my late husband. And Gail, perhaps out of atonement for those he hurt during the bubble economy, seemed to reject his own happiness, so he never made a move. Thank you for watching over me all these years. Would you consider growing old with me from now on? It must have been an unexpected proposal for Gail. With money, one can live alone, but it's much better to have a partner to grow old with. Wait a minute. Please, let me propose to you properly, later, Gail said, checked my ring size, and then hurriedly exclaimed, I'm off to buy a ring. Excuse me. Before rushing out.